think the art of writing well is something wonderful to know. And even if you aren't going to become a writer, it's wonderful to have all through your life.
Shopkeeper took another Whipple Scrumptious Fudge Mallow Delight from the shelf. He laid it on the counter. Charlie picked it up and tore off the wrapper, and suddenly, from underneath the wrapper, there came a brilliant flash of gold. Charlie's heart stood still. "It's a golden ticket!" screamed the shopkeeper, leaping about a foot in the air. "You've got a golden ticket! You found the last golden ticket!" Isn't it lovely?
It's gorgeous. I can't believe it, Gail. We're just about to turn up at Roald Dahl's house.
I know. And here it is. This is Gypsy House.
Where all those fantastic stories were written.
Well, no, you're wrong there.
What do you mean?
Well, come and have a look at this.
Hey?
Come on. This is where he wrote his stories. Wow! Every morning and every afternoon, Dahl would sit in here for 2 hours writing. Miss Trunchbull, the headmistress, was something else altogether. She was a gigantic holy terror.
That's from Matilda, isn't it?
It is. You can just imagine him sitting here, can't you?
Ah, I can, but I don't have to.
Hey?
Watch. The great man himself.
You see, he had his routine all worked out. He'd get himself comfortable,
Put his homemade writing desk just at the right angle.
sharpen his pencils, and off he went.
And once he was settled in his chair, there were no distractions. He could write and write and write and write.
Just think of all the great stories that came out of this tiny room.
Charlie in the Chocolate Factory.
James and the Giant Peach.
Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Danny, the champion of the world.
George's Marvellous Medicine.
The Witches. Matilda.
The Twigs.
And here they all are.
Roald Dahl's books have been translated into just about every language on the planet and sold in places as far-flung as Brazil and Norway and Japan. Have a look at this. This is de GVR.
What's that?
Well, it's actually the BFG in Dutch. Or how about this one? Le BGG. It's the BFG in French, or my favourite, the GGG, which is the Big Friendly Giant in Italian. You see, his books are sold all over the place.
So what's so good about Roald Dahl?
Ah, well, he writes really good baddies for a start.
Good baddies?
Yeah, I don't mean good baddies. I mean really excellent baddies. And his goodies aren't too bad either.
See, Roald Dahl said that to have a really successful children's story, you had to have a mixture of nice people and nasty people.
He said in every children's book, there has to be somebody you can loathe. Like the blood bottler. Or as they say in Afrikaans, the blood slurper.
The blood bottler was a gruesome sight. The hair on his head was long and dark and tangled. His foul face was round and squashy-looking. The eyes were tiny black holes, the nose was small and flat, but the mouth was huge. It spread right across the face, almost ear to ear, and it had lips that were like two gigantic purple frankfurters lying one on top of the other. Craggy yellow teeth stuck out between the two purple frankfurter lips, and rivers of spit ran down over the chin.
I find that the only way to make my characters really interesting to children is to exaggerate all their good or bad qualities. And so if a person is nasty or bad or cruel, you make them very nasty, very bad, very cruel. And if they're ugly, you make them extremely ugly. That, I think, is fun.
So if a character is ugly, make them really ugly. And if they're thin, make them really thin.
Like Aunt Spiker in James and the Giant Peach. She was lean, tall and bony, with long, wet, narrow lips.
Or hideously hairy like Mr. Twit in the Twits, whose beard grew in spikes that stuck out straight like the bristles of a nail brush.
Or horribly ugly, like the Grand High Witch in The Witches.
Or fantastically fat, like Augustus Gloop in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
The picture showed a 9-year-old boy who was so enormously fat he looked as though he'd been blown up with a powerful pump. Great flabby folds of fat bulged out from every part of his body, and his face was like a monstrous ball of dough with 2 small, greedy, curranty eyes peering out upon the world.
But whether fat or thin, or hairy or ugly, all dolls' villains have one thing in common.
They hate children.
Children are dirty and stinky,
Screamed the Grand High Witch.
dirty and stinky.
Cried the audience, getting more and more worked up.
Children are smelling of dogs' droppings.
Screeched the Grand High Witch.
Pooh!
Cried the audience.
Pooh, pooh, pooh! They are worse than dogs' droppings.
Screeched the Grand High Witch.
Dogs' droppings is smelling like violets and primroses compared with children. To talk about children is making me sick.
Screamed the Grand High Witch.
I am feeling sick even thinking about them. Fetch me a basin.
But however horrible they are, dolls' baddies never win.
Ever.
You cannot let evil triumph at all. You can let the reader think it's going to triumph, but then it mustn't. And for children, of course, the ones that make good triumph in children's book is the hero or the heroine, the little child always, and that's fun.
And nearly all dolls' heroes are children.
And not just ordinary children either.
No, they've got to be unusual in some way or live with someone really nasty.
Ah, like George and his horrible grandmother.
Yeah, she had a mouth like a dog's bottom.
That's the one.
Or like Sophie in the BFG, she lived in an orphanage.
Or Charlie, whose family was so poor that they only had one bed between them.
Yeah. Oh, and then there was Matilda, who from a very early age had extraordinary powers.
Little waves of lightning seemed to be flashing out of her eyes. Her eyeballs were beginning to get hot, as though vast energy was building up somewhere inside them. It was an amazing sensation. She kept her eyes steadily on the glass, and now the power was concentrating itself in one small part of each eye and growing stronger and stronger, and it felt as though millions of tiny little invisible arms with hands on them were shooting out of her eyes towards the glass she was staring at. "Tip it," Matilda whispered. "Tip it over." She saw the glass wobble.
So, how did he think up all those characters?
Well, sometimes he got ideas from people he met or from photographs. Like if he saw a picture in the paper and he thought the person had a really interesting face, then he'd cut the picture out and keep it just in case he got inspiration from it later on.
So, you've already got your hero who's interesting or exciting in some way. Then all you have to do is to add a baddie, make them really horrible, and base them on someone you know, maybe.
What are you looking at me for?
Well, obviously I'd have to exaggerate your characteristics a little bit. I could give you a really long neck. I could make you really fat. Or I could give you a ridiculously big nose. Well, actually, I think you'd probably be more like the teacher in Matilda.
Ah, you mean Miss Honey, who had a lovely pale oval Madonna face, clear blue eyes and light brown hair.
Actually, no, Gail. I was thinking more of Miss Trunchbull.
Miss Trunchbull had now reached the victim and stood towering over her.
I want those filthy pigtails off before you come back to school tomorrow, she barked. Chop 'em off and throw 'em in the dustbin. You understand?
Amanda, paralysed with fright, managed to stutter.
Mummy likes them. She plats them for me every morning. Your mummy's a twit,
the Trunchbull bellowed. She pointed a finger the size of a salami at the child's head and shouted,
You look like a rat with a tail coming out of its head. My mummy thinks I look lovely, Mr. Trunchbull,
Amanda stuttered, shaking like a blancmange.
I don't give a tinker's toot what your mummy thinks,
the Trunchbull yelled, and with that, she lunged forward and grabbed hold of Amanda's pigtails in her right fist and lifted the girl clear off the ground. Then she started swinging her round and round her head, faster and faster, and Amanda was screaming blue murder, and the Trunchbull was yelling,
I'll give you pigtails, you little rat!
When you're writing a book, it is no good having people who are ordinary. Every writer in the world has to use characters that have something interesting about them.
Meet Wally Saunders, a local builder who worked for the Dahl family and who was the inspiration for the BFG.
Very, very happy memories of this place. Oh, yeah.
What work were you actually doing for the family? What was your job?
I built that ace, that little writing room.
Why do you think Mr. Dahl chose you to be in one of his books?
A bit of a character of a kind, I suppose.
You is deaf as a dumpling compared with me, cried the BFG. You is hearing only thumping loud noises with those little earwigs of yours. But I am hearing all the secret whisperings of the world. Such as what? Sophie asked. In your country, he said, I is hearing the footsteps of a ladybird as she goes walking across a leaf. Honestly, Sophie said, beginning to be impressed. What's more, I is hearing those footsteps very loud, the BFG said. When a ladybird is walking across a leaf, I is hearing her feet going clumpety, clumpety, clump, like giants' footsteps. Good gracious me, Sophie said. What else can you hear? Sometimes, on a very clear night, the BFG said, and if I is swiggling my ears in the right direction, I is sometimes hearing faraway music coming from the stars in the sky.
I can't believe it. We've actually met the real BFG.
I study people for their tiny little peculiarities. Every little detail is important when you're describing a person.